Ferrari didn't announce this transformation with press conferences or glossy Netflix teasers. It happened quietly, in moments, in mannerisms, in the tone of a race engineer's voice. While the world debated whether Lewis Hamilton could ever truly change Ferrari, or whether Ferrari would change him first, something far more interesting was unfolding behind the pit wall. Not a clash, not a culture war, but a quiet alignment between two men who've lived inside the DNA of championship dominance, Lewis Hamilton and Jerome D'Ambrosio. If you've been watching closely, you'll have noticed the shift. Not in the results column, at least not yet, but in the structure. In how decisions are made, how disagreements are handled, how chaos has slowly been replaced with cadence. D'Ambrosio, once Toto Wolff's strategic shadow at Mercedes, isn't just playing interim manager in Maranello. He's the connective tissue between the fire of Ferrari and the formula of Lewis Hamilton. The only person in the room who truly speaks both languages, passion and process. Since the start of the season, and especially after the latest test at Silverstone, the outline of something bigger is becoming visible. Ferrari may not be leading the championship, but inside they are starting to resemble something they haven't been in over a decade. A functioning, forward-moving system. And Hamilton is not a passenger in that process. He's a co-architect. When Hamilton first stepped into the red suit, the question wasn't about speed. It was about survival. Would Ferrari break him before he could rebuild them? The ghosts of champions past, Vettel, Alonso, even Raikkonen, still echo around Maranello's corridors. Drivers who arrived full of promise, only to be worn down by miscommunication, missed opportunities, and a team structure that often felt built on sentiment rather than steel. But Hamilton didn't arrive alone. He brought with him years of institutional memory, habits, standards, and expectations molded inside Mercedes' dynastic run. And in D'Ambrosio, he found a subtle but crucial ally. Someone who didn't just understand the language of execution, but could translate it into Ferrari's ecosystem without setting off alarms. This season hasn't been without tension. Hamilton has questioned strategy. Results have varied. But what's changed, what's kept this experiment intact, is the way Ferrari responds. Radio calls that once would have triggered an internal firestorm are now met with measured calm. D'Ambrosio doesn't escalate. He anchors. He doesn't shout to be heard. He speaks so clearly there's no room for doubt. And Hamilton, despite the competitive fire, isn't trying to dominate the team. He's trying to mold it, to elevate it. There's a visible difference in posture, in how feedback loops work during debriefs, in how simulations translate into track execution. Silverstone showed that even under the weight of national expectations, Ferrari didn't fold. They didn't win. But they didn't implode either. And for Ferrari, that's progress worth more than points. The deeper revelation here isn't about one race or one strategy call. It's about cultural re-engineering. Hamilton isn't just adapting to Ferrari, he's testing it, not in rebellion, but through calculated resistance. Every time he challenges a pit call, questions a tyre plan, or pushes back mid-race, he's sending a signal, show me you're ready to lead. And each time, the response has grown more confident, more cohesive. This isn't the old Ferrari that cracked under pressure or delayed pit calls while rival teams danced past them in the pit lane. This is a version that listens, responds, adjusts, and owns its decisions. And D'Ambrosio is central to that evolution. Unlike traditional team bosses who draw attention, D'Ambrosio thrives in the background, but his fingerprints are everywhere, in the restructuring of the race strategy unit, in the more disciplined post-session reviews, in how Hamilton's feedback is prioritized without overshadowing Leclerc or Sainz. He doesn't chase headlines. He builds frameworks. And Hamilton? He thrives in frameworks. Give him structure, and he delivers artistry. That's what we saw glimpses of at Silverstone. Not just a strong drive, but a driver who's beginning to trust that he's no longer alone in fighting for precision. Hamilton has always been about more than raw speed. He's a systems thinker. And for the first time since his Mercedes prime, he's starting to look like a man who believes the system behind him is finally catching up. There's an irony in all this. Hamilton, long accused of needing the perfect machine, is now helping repair the most beautifully imperfect one in motorsport history. Ferrari isn't clean, it isn't cold, it's operatic. Everything is heightened. The stakes, the politics, the passion. And for years, that passion has burned drivers out. But Hamilton isn't here to be consumed by the flame. He's here to redirect it. And with D'Ambrosio beside him, he just might. What we're watching isn't just a sporting experiment, it's a cultural balancing act. One part emotional chaos, one part engineered calm. And in recent races, that equilibrium has begun to settle. At Silverstone, there was no emotional overreach, no rogue decisions. The team operated like a unit. Small details, double-stack pit efficiency, sector-delta communication, even the tone of the driver-engineer exchanges, pointed to a group that's learning to breathe together. And make no mistake, this isn't just about Hamilton. It's about whether Ferrari can finally stop eating itself from the inside. Can it tolerate structure long enough to build something lasting? Can it allow outsiders to lead without constantly testing their loyalty? Because Hamilton and D'Ambrosio aren't here for a cameo. They're here to change the story. And if Ferrari lets them, this moment won't be remembered for individual race results. It'll be remembered as the year Ferrari began to grow up and grow dangerous. Look beyond the scoreboard, and you'll see the real championship being contested inside Ferrari's garage. It's not about Red Bull or McLaren anymore. It's about culture versus collapse, about whether discipline can survive tradition. And what we're seeing, week by week, is that Ferrari isn't just holding on, it's evolving, slowly, methodically. The Hamilton-D'Ambrosio axis isn't flashy, it's not even fully visible. But like all transformative forces, it works in layers, in debrief formats, in simulation accuracy, in the silence between radio messages, where panic used to live and planning now resides. Hamilton knows what it takes to win 7 titles. D'Ambrosio knows what it looks like to manage a winning team. Together, they're not trying to imitate Mercedes. They're trying to forge a new identity inside the oldest team on the grid. And that's why this story matters. Not because of one race result, but because Ferrari, for once, doesn't look like a ticking time bomb. It looks like a team assembling its weapons, quietly, carefully. If that continues, if this partnership holds, then history will mark 2025 not as the year Ferrari won the championship, but as the year Ferrari finally learned how to build one. And the rest of the grid should take note. Because if Hamilton and D'Ambrosio succeed in rewiring Ferrari from within, they won't just end a drought, they'll start a dynasty. What happens next will define not just Ferrari's season, but its long-term future. Because if this Hamilton-D'Ambrosio dynamic continues to deepen, it becomes more than a support system, it becomes a competitive weapon. Formula One has seen fast Ferraris before. We've seen dominant qualifying laps, inspired drives, and occasional title challenges. But what we haven't seen in over a decade is sustained control. The kind of cool, repeatable excellence that defines eras, not weekends. That's what Mercedes mastered. That's what Red Bull has refined. And that's what Hamilton and D'Ambrosio are quietly modelling. Without press releases, without bravado. Just method, just structure. Long after the Silverstone applause fades and the YouTube thumbnails move on, this partnership will still be working in the shadows. In simulator sessions, in tire compound debriefs, in how they bring younger engineers into high-pressure decision-making moments. That's the legacy-building layer of Formula One. It's invisible to most fans, but it's what turns a strong car into a dynasty. And for Hamilton, this isn't a swan song, it's a statement of intent. He didn't come to Ferrari to collect farewell points. He came to design his own final chapter, and perhaps to lift Ferrari into its next one. The same goes for D'Ambrosio. If this alliance proves sustainable, Ferrari will no longer just be a team with potential. It will be a team with process. And when passion is finally married to process in Maranello, that's when legends stop fading and start forming again.